one of the topics that came up in the last two evening classes, I thought to emphasize again in this evening's class, and that is a very nice section that we read from Uddhava Gita, Canto 11, Chapter 7, text number 6, where what happens to a devotee if that devotee is unable to remember Krishna at the time of death? Because yam yam vapi smaran bhavam jajat ante kalevaram. Absolutely, ante. It's a principle. Whatever the mind is fixed on. Supposing the mind isn't fixed on Krishna, what happens? You lived your life as a devotee. So there's two nice references. Actually, there's three. The one that we read is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, or it's Bhaktisiddhanta. This language is Bhaktisiddhanta's summary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. So it's Uddhava Gita 11.7.6. Sometimes, being fully engaged in my devotional service, they may seemingly forget me. But a pure devotee who possesses love for me will always be protected by his sincere devotion. Even if such a devotee unexpectedly meets with death while forgetting to keep his mind fixed upon Krishna, his love for me is so strong that it will give him protection. His love, his devotion, so that he will eventually attain my lotus feet, which are beyond the vision of materialistic persons. And there's a similar reference, doesn't give the verse number, but from Varaha Purana, or Adi Varaha Purana, Yadi Vatadi Doshena Madbhakto Mam Na Cha Smaret. Na Mam Na Cha Smaret. Aham Smarami Madbhakta Nayami Parama Gatim. If my devotee is unable to remember me at the time of death because of disturbances felt within the body at that time, Yadi Vadati Doshena, then I shall remember my devotee and take him back to my supreme abode, Varaha Purana. And this statement is, the third reference is when Ramanujacharya was having a conversation, asking questions of Lord Varadaraj in Kanchipuram. He asked this question, what happens to the devotee who can't remember the Lord at the time of death? So there's three references. And here's another one. Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text 29. This is Yamaraj speaking to the Yamadutas. My dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, which are alone the only duties of human life. Bring me all such fools and rascals. So it's got a lot of Hey, that was an interesting verse. So I thought I would read specifically again. So we're discussing Brahma's prayers, but he finished his prayers with text 30. We're now at 37. And what happens after Brahma goes back to Brahmaloka, stealing the calves and cowherd boys, that pastime? Brahma offers prayers. My dear master, although you have nothing to do with material existence, you come to this earth and imitate material life just to expand the varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for your surrendered devotees. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, no, excuse me, this is the BBT purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that this is just as a lamp does not seem to shine as brightly in sunlight as it does in the shade, or as a diamond does not seem as brilliant on a silver platter as it does on a plate of blue glass. The Lord's pastimes as Govinda do not seem as amazing in the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha as they do within the material realm of Maya. I think we read this. We read this. Yeah, we read this. So his verses end with text 40, and we're beyond 40. So pardon me, but we had a nice time reading those other references. Let's go forward. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay. Got mixed up. 41. 42. 40. Okay. Okay. That's where it went. Text 44. 10:14:44. Kim tim na vismaranti ha. What indeed is not forgotten? What indeed is not forgotten by those whose minds are bewildered by the Lord's illusory potency? By that power of Maya, this entire universe remains in perpetual bewilderment, and in this atmosphere of forgetfulness, no one can understand his own identity. This is Shukadeva Goswami speaking. It is clearly stated here that the entire universe is bewildered. Thus, even the great demigods like Indra and Brahma are not exempt from the principles of forgetfulness. Since Lord Krishna exercised his internal illusory potency over his cowherd boyfriends and calves, Krishna exerted his internal illusory potency over his cowherd boyfriends and calves. It is not at all astonishing that for 1 year they could not remember their position. Indeed, by the Lord's external illusory potency, the conditioned souls forget their existence not only for 1 year, but for many billions and billions of years, as they transmigrate throughout the kingdom of ignorance called the material world. In the previous, this is chapter 14. In the previous chapter was the 1 year where the cowherd boys were Krishna and the calves were Krishna, and the mothers thought their affection for their son was like their affection for Krishna, and they were bewildered, and so forth. Then it describes after Brahma's prayers, Krishna goes back, and there's the cowherd boys, just as they were, saying, "Oh, Krishna, you're so attached. Can't be away for a moment. Sit down and finish your lunch," because he's walking around with a lump of rice yogurt in his hand. And Krishna brings the calves, like everything just happened in the flesh. And so they are not aware that a whole year passed, although a whole year passed by, solar time, Earth solar time. And the comment is, that's not surprising. If they can forget who they are for a whole year, most people forget who they are for billions and billions. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes, because it also shows a similar quality of deluding, Yoga Maya is compared with the potency of material Maya. Maya makes the jiva forget his identity, Vismrit Atmaka. Just as Mahamaya keeps the jiva in forgetfulness of his self, Yoga Maya made the cowherd boys forget separation from Krishna, which lasted a year. Short Jiva Goswami commentary. An example is given. Who, bewildered by Maya, does not forget in this world? Everyone perpetually forgets. In deep sleep or even with knowledge of scriptures, everyone forgets that they are different from the gross and subtle bodies. This is the power of Maya. Because Krishna's Ichcha Shakti is so powerful, it can bewilder even his own associates. And Sanatana Goswami, similarly, very short. In this world, the Atma, or the Lord, who spreads everywhere, is forgotten. All, even Indra, are bewildered because there is constant abhikshnam, forgetfulness of what was remembered or recalled. That is the power of Maya. And Jiva Goswami again writes, in this atmosphere of forgetfulness, no one can understand his own identity. That's the power of Maya. Okay, so now we're going on. 10:14:45. The cowherd boyfriends said to Lord Krishna, "Oh, you have returned so quickly? We have not even eaten one morsel. In your absence, please come here and take your meal without distraction." The words Su Agatam Teti Ramhasa indicate that the cowherd boys were congratulating Lord Krishna for having brought the calves back so quickly from the forest. Now, Lord Krishna's beloved friends urge him to sit down properly and eat to his full satisfaction. According to Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, the cowherd boyfriends felt quite jubilant and were eager to eat with their dear friend Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, in his commentary, writes, the cowherd boys spoke to Krishna, who had quickly returned with happiness. Swagatam. Quote, we thought you would be gone for at least one gatika. How long is a gatika? I don't know how long that is. We thought you would take at least one gatika to bring the calves back from so far away, but you have brought them back in an instant. Without you, we have not eaten a morsel. Therefore, please, come here. Jiva Goswami writes, similarly very short, you have come nicely, Swagatam, bringing all the calves. Though a year had passed, they remained with the food in their hands by the power of Krishna's Itcha Shakti. Probably it means it kept them from the food spoiling for a year too. I mean, the boys being forgetful is one thing, and the food not spoiling is another thing. But Krishna's potency. You have not eaten a particle of food. You are holding the same food in your hand as before. Enter here among us, looking for the calves and bringing them together, or giving up anxiety which arose from that venture. Eat heartily. Sadhu. And another commentary of Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandarbha. The cowherd boyfriend said to Krishna, you have returned so quickly. We have not eaten even one morsel in your absence. Please come here and take your meal to full satisfaction. Brahma had taken all the boys and calves to another place. Remember we discussed this? Jiva Goswami is referring to 10, 13, 15. And it specifically says he took them to another place. Krishna brought them back in an instant. But they were unaware of this. That's a fourth version. One was they were in mystic slumber for 1 year in a cave. Another is he brought them back in an instant. But they didn't even know that they were brought back. Wow. Yogamaya potency is pretty good. This is understood from their speech. All doubts were removed by Maya. That same Maya was the Lord's personal servant, which deluded Brahma, and was arranged by the Lord. Balaram has said, again back in chapter 13, this must be the Maya of my brother. Anyone need clarification, or it's clear? Okay, it's text 46. Then Lord Rishikesh, smiling, finished his lunch in the company of his cowherd friends. While they were returning from the forest to their homes in Braja, Lord Krishna showed the cowherd boys the skin of the dead serpent, Aghasura, which was 1 year later. It wasn't just like before lunch, after lunch. 1 year later. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, smiling to show his bliss, Krishna ate with the boys. Even though a year had passed, the food did not show any lack of taste. Oh, friends, look at the skin of this snake. In order that the boys would spread the news of the killing of Aghasura, Yogamaya had kept the snake there for a year under her influence, Yogamaya. Giving up the forest pastimes, he returned home. Jiva Goswami writes, Krishna smiled because the boys, who had been bewildered, became joyful on hearing his words, which did not make mention of anything to cause them suffering. Krishna is called the Lord of the senses to show that he was dear to all of them. He showed them the skin so that they would talk about it in Braja. The Lord kept the skin covered by Maya for a whole year. Means no one could see that skin sitting there, not only cowherd boys, nobody. Invisible snake skin. Sanatan Goswami writes, Krishna smiled because the boys, who had been bewildered, became joyful on hearing his words, which did not make mention of anything to cause them suffering. He dined with the boys. Without them, he would not eat for all that time. How would Yashoda tolerate this? Krishna was the power behind all the senses, Rishikesh. They became satisfied because of his skill at imitating eating. Another famous example is that of Lakshmana and Ram. Though he was not inclined to eat, he did so to satisfy the boys. He ate with great satisfaction while accepting things with different tastes and aromas by instigating his own sense of taste, etc. Then he returned to Braja. He showed the boys the skin of Aghasura. This created memory so that they could tell of the killing of Agha in Braja. The skin remained covered by Maya all this time by the Lord. And we'll end with this really short conclusion. This is Jiva Goswami writing, Then Krishna, smiling, finished his lunch in the company of his friends. Showing them the skin of the Aghasura, he returned from the forest to Braja. Well, sorry for getting off track with which verse was for this evening. But it seems like the mystery that we were dealing with kind of has at least one explanation is very, very plausible. That is, Balaram did kidnap the calves, and the cowherd boys. That was his mystic power. Krishna empowered his mystic power or sanctioned his mystic power with his own Yogamaya. So in fact, Brahma put them where he put them. Then Krishna, by his own mystic power, brought them back. Like as instantly they had been put away somewhere. Krishna brought them back. Or very shortly thereafter. And so that makes it a little seamless because in these verses, right after Brahma's prayers finish, the very next verse says, Krishna brought the calves from the forest to the place where the boys were having a lunch by the bank of the river Jamuna, indicating that they were there all along and that he had gone to get the calves and he brought the calves back. Fortunately, not only is Krishna's time energy very flexible, his space energy is also. His energies are without limit and very flexible. One of the mentions that Sadaputa really liked, because I heard it from him many times. Sadaputa, Prabhupada disciple who got his PhD at Cornell University and wrote many books on science and the Vedas, modern science and the Vedas. So his field was mathematics, but his range was very vast. So in theoretical physics, modern theoretical physics, there is an evolving idea of multi-level realities there's two-dimensional and three-dimensional and then multi-dimensional realities. It's an Einstein and modern theoretical physics idea. Multi-dimensional space. It's conceptual, it's notional. But with that idea, that's how Sariputta uses modern science to explain that which is otherwise like a mythology story. When the various Brahmas come to meet Krishna in Dwarka, and our four-headed Brahma comes first, and then he sees all the Brahmas coming, and they don't see each other, but he sees all of them. And he has 4 heads. Some Brahmas have 10 heads. Some Brahmas have 100 heads. Some, because their universes are much bigger, that's one of the explanations. They have so many heads. And simultaneously they place their heads, their helmets, with a big crashing sound at the feet of Krishna. Now, how big are the feet of Krishna? And how many helmets are there for all these Brahmas with so many heads? And they're simultaneously touching Krishna's feet, or the place just before Krishna's feet. His answer is, if you allow for multi-dimensional space, then it's easy. And so Krishna's movement of space and time is very flexible. That's the idea. That not only his potencies are so vast, they're unlimited, they're also very flexible. One of the ones that I like with time is the morning that the Kaliya Leela takes place, Krishna dancing on the hoods of the Kaliya serpent. That morning, Balaram doesn't come, so Krishna goes alone, and the cowherd boys invite much contrary to their usual pattern. They went straight from Nandagram to Kaliyagat. And then when Krishna was in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, one of the boys went back to inform Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's in difficulty. And then Nanda Maharaj and everybody came. Now, if you go by car, like a taxi, not a bus or a bullock cart, but you go by car, to go from Kaliyagat to Nandagram, how long it takes? 2 hours by car? Hour and 40 minutes, maybe. 2 hours. And then back. So how'd they get back and forth so quickly? And one explanation is given, Prabhupada's explanation. The abode of Krishna is shaped like a lotus, and just like the petals of a lotus are sometimes open, sometimes they close. So the distance between point A and point B can be less if the petals close. What do you say to that, huh? But however he does it, space is quite flexible, time is quite flexible, for the purpose of pastimes. For the purpose of pastimes. Space is quite flexible. Krishna showed Mother Yasoda the whole universe within his abdomen, and she was holding Krishna in her lap, which means she was holding the whole universe in her lap, in addition to the universe that was around her. So space is quite flexible. Time is quite flexible. According to Krishna's Ichha Shakti. So by Krishna's Ichha Shakti, the cowherd boys forgot, and the food in their plates didn't spoil, and they hadn't even eaten a morsel, and they didn't even realize the whole year passed. although their bodies were 1 year older. So if you're Krishna, you can do all these things. And if you're not, you're just a storyteller. But Sukadeva Goswami is not, and Vyasadeva and all these great acharyas, they're not interested in fairy tales and fiction. That's not what it is. We have faith in them, and thus we have faith in the scriptures. And we see the practical effect of hearing from the scripture. What impact does that have on the quality and character of individuals that are otherwise bewildered by the illusory potency? How powerful is the illusory potency? I've often thought about it. Like, every living entity is under the whammy of, the plants on the windowsill. How many varieties of species of life are there? How many living entities are there? According to Madhvacharya, not only within every atom there's an Atma, there's unlimited numbers of Atmas within every atom. Remember hearing that one? That was that Madhvacharya seminar. And not only that, they can occupy the same space because it's not, the space of an atom is a material space. And there's no material space for a soul because it's not a physical object. One physical object cannot occupy the same space as another. But a spiritual object unlimited spiritual object cannot occupy a space, a physical space. The bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest. And so the soul is of the same quality. Not quantity, but same quality. It's totally mind-blowing. It's incomprehensible to material thought. But it just goes to the point that the potencies of Krishna are without limit. And the purpose of Krishna's spiritual potency is reciprocating loving dealings. He loves his devotees, and the devotees love him. And so it's simply a reciprocation of loving dealings. And in one case, one is the controller and the other is the controlled. And the ones that are controlled, they're very, very happy being controlled by the benevolent Supreme Controller. And the one who's the benevolent Supreme Controller is very happy to be engaged in loving dealings with those who love him without constraint. The sky's the limit. There is no limit to that, the happiness and the character and the qualities and the different loving exchanges. Even when those loving exchanges look contrary. Like Krishna's in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, or like Nanda Maharaj is being swallowed by a serpent, or twin Arjuna trees fall over in the courtyard, and there's two little children. They could have gotten crushed. I mean, what are parents going to think like that? Something like that happens. Horrible. It's very dangerous. But it's loving exchange. No problem for Krishna. The essence of this, because we've been reading extensively the 10th canto, the essence of this 10th canto is bhakti and the medium of loving exchanges between the residents of Vrindavan and Krishna and different personalities observing that. sometimes Shukadeva Goswami observing it, sometimes Brahma observing it, sometimes Akrura observing it, sometimes Narada observing it, and then there's the residents of Vrindavan themselves participating. It's all loving exchange. Krishna is reciprocating perfectly with each and every one, according to their different positions. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. And even if you don't remember Krishna, try your very best to become very attached to him, in a mood of serving him. And that love for him and service for him, spirit, will carry you to the spiritual world, even if you don't remember Krishna as you would want to at the moment of death. Very reassuring. After all, Krishna is kind. So discussion. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I just looked up. Gatika is 24 minutes, Maharaj.
Oh, that's a half a muhurta.
I think I got lost a little bit with when you were expressing how one view is there's a year gap before the boys come back, and then there's the other view is they're swiftly after the press, Krishna brings them back and they have their meal together.
And there's another that they never left. I mean, they were instantly brought back. He put them in the cave, and unbeknownst to Brahma, Krishna brought them back. Poof. He didn't have to go anywhere, he just brought them back by his mystic power.
So those model 2 and 3, did they actually then have that, did the mothers and the cows have Krishna as
Yeah, oh
their
yeah.
son?
That happens in all at each one of those models.
And that happened for a year though.
So now there's earthly time, the solar year, and the solar year passed. And those boys were just sitting there, not getting tired, not getting hungry, not even knowing the time is passing for a whole year. Yogamaya.
While Krishna was with
Well,
their
Krishna was
mothers.
being Krishna. Krishna was being them.
Wow.
With their mothers. Yeah. And Balaram was with the cowherd boys that were Krishna during that 1 year. And he didn't know what was going on until the end. And then at the end, Krishna started pulling back the yoga. So even Yogamaya works on Balaram, not only the cowherd boys, but he pulled back the curtain, specifically for Balaram so he could see what's going on. Oh, this must be the Maya of my brother. It's fun. He's just having fun. Loving. Fulfilling the desires of the mothers. And his cowherd boyfriends, they didn't mind being under Yogamaya for a year. Not eating for a year. Quite mysterious. No, because time is very flexible.
Guru Maharaj, similar to the experience of the cowherd boys, when we return back to Krishna,
As if no time had passed. Prabhupada says.
now the cowherd boys forgot whatever had happened during that year. I certainly hope I'm not going to forget the lessons I've learned here.
That's up to Krishna. He's the source of remembrance of forgetfulness.
And Prabhupada says that we learn our lesson, right? Once we go back.
But what does that mean? It's that, it can be at the heart level. It doesn't have to be at the head level. A real happiness is being in a relationship with Krishna. Not in forgetting and trying to separately enjoy. That's the lesson. It can be at the heart level, not at the head level. Don't worry about it. Krishna will take care of you. You get to that stage, you're in good hands.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have few questions.
Okay.
First one is why God has created this universe Earth,
Uh-huh.
and what is the purpose of creating this universe? And
Why creation? Don't go to the next one. That's your first question is why creation?
why the
Why? Okay. There's two main reasons. Allowing the living entities to try to enjoy independently because they want. And Krishna's not wanting, but they want. It's not possible to enjoy independently, but they want.
Yeah.
So he creates the realm of Maya so they can try to do Mission Impossible.
Mhm.
Enjoy independently from Krishna. It's not possible. There's no such thing. But they want.
Okay.
So he creates because they want.
They want it. Okay.
And then the second is he wants. He wants to correct that mistake.
Mhm.
Like a loving parent will want to correct
Correct.
something that's detrimental for their child. So Krishna wants. What he wants is to correct. So it's a place for learning lessons. That's unwise. It's foolish desire. Those are the two reasons.
The second question is how to overcome envy.
Envy.
Yeah.
You know somebody who's envious, huh? Okay.
And the third is
Wait. Let's go to the second one before you go to the third one.
okay.
How do you overcome envy? Well, envy, the root of envy of someone else is envy of Krishna. Let me explain. Somebody over there has something. They have fame, or they have an ability, or they have money, or they have something. I want that something. But they've got it. So I envy that person that has that something. So what's the root of that envy? It's envy towards Krishna, because where'd they get that something? They got it from Krishna. He has a big warehouse. He has lots of money and lots of abilities and lots of all kinds of things. So my envy is actually envy of Krishna. So you correct envy of others by correcting the envy of Krishna. Now, how do you do that? So, by the process of how do you get warm when it's cold? You stand next to something that's hot and you get warm. By association, similarly, by those that have no envy, one can become free from envy. You associate with Krishna and the devotees of Krishna whose hearts are pure, and that's purifying. We can overcome our envy towards Krishna And by overcoming envy towards Krishna, we can overcome envy towards others who have been given something by Krishna. You should be happy for them because they can serve Krishna with that nice something. Third question.
And the last question, how to strike balance between material life and spiritual life?
Hey, this is a classic one. I'll tell you, that question is top 5 of all the questions asked for a traveling sannyasi. That question. And I've got a disappointing answer. My answer is, it's not about balance, it's about time management. Because the balance means there's what's for Krishna, and that's the other stuff.
Yeah.
But the other stuff should be for Krishna too. So the material should be spiritual. Let's say, he's got a wife and 2 children, and so he has a job, he has livelihood. So you could say that's the material part of his life. So what he needs to know, learn, and become accomplished in is spiritualize that. And so it's not a matter of balance between spiritual and material, it's time management, because everything, for one who's living their life in devotion to Krishna, is there something that's non-Krishna? Everything is Krishna. So this is for Krishna. So my japa is for Krishna, my reading the Bhagavatam is for Krishna, going to the office is for Krishna, cooking in the kitchen is for Krishna, cleaning the house is for Krishna.
Yeah.
So it's more about time management than it is about balancing material spiritual. And so a responsible householder with a wife and 2 children, or a sannyasi that doesn't have children but has lots of children, it's time management. And I need to, each of us need to prioritize, this is the sadhana bhakti time, and I just don't do other things. I don't multitask while I'm doing sadhana bhakti. I'm hearing and chanting and remembering and praying and worshiping and connecting. And then that connecting capacity gets reposed on the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And then I do just like this evening, we're doing our hearing and chanting again. So we're connecting again, directly. And then there's the not directly, that you could say that's the material, but it's actually spiritual. It's just it's paraphernalia for Krishna's service, or part of the creation. Back to your first question, what's the purpose of creation? Is to give us an opportunity to correct ourselves, the mistake that we made. And so instead of separate enjoyment, we engage in activities that are for Krishna's enjoyment, including, the lovely part of life of going to work. Because it's part of my duty and service to Krishna. And keeping the house clean is part of my duty and service to Krishna. It's not just a chore, housework, it's service to Krishna. And it's a whole other thing, thinking of it as service to Krishna, thinking of it as, I don't like a place that's not clean, so I got to keep it clean. And that's what I do. I'm a housekeeper, housewife. I look after the house. So yeah, it's time management. It's not balance. That's my disappointing answer.
No, there's a correct answer. No, very good.
Okay. Let's see if we have something online.
This is from Snehavali Mataji. My question is related to Raganuga Bhakti. many places we have seen Rupa Goswami's verse that we must follow Ragatmika Bhaktas in Vrindavan and under their direct guidance serve Krishna. I have a three-part question. One, are Ragatmika Bhaktas only the eternal associates of Krishna who participate in his pastimes?
That's what Rupa Goswami says. No, there are residents of Vrindavan, like Prabhupada is a resident of Vrindavan. But the term Ragatmika, yes, it refers to the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan.
Two, if not, then how to identify the Ragatmika Bhaktas?
And three,
If we have to follow the eternal associates of Krishna, then is it by meditating on their activities in mind and then follow in their footsteps?
first become qualified to do anything beyond what you're doing. That's my advice. But when you get to that stage, yes, internal absorption, external regulative bhakti. It's an internal cultivation. But you have to be qualified. You have to be qualified. Don't get ahead of yourself without mentioning things. You know, there are things in your life that you know don't belong there. And you do those things that don't belong there before you go on to this Ragatmika thing. And she knows what I mean. And we all have our things. Okay. What about the lady of the house? You have anything? Going to the kitchen. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Chicago weather ki jai. But it's hitting the whole, not just Chicago, it's hitting the whole Midwest.